So Minette, you've invited us here today to talk about Red Tractor. What is your pitch to the membership?
I think it's an absolutely critical time, and obviously having seen the coverage that you've done, our council meeting last week, what I've been saying to the members is, we hear you absolutely loud and clear, and I think we need to see action on two things effectively now. We had the resolution that was passed by our council unanimously on the governance of Red Tractor and ultimately its relationship with the NFU. And so today I've pulled all of our council in, our Food, Farming and Environment Board, to look at effectively setting the terms of reference for what that independent review would look like on the governance. I think it's really important, Abby, that it is independent. There's so many myths flying about our relationship with Red Tractor. Do we own it? Do we put money in? No, we don't. And no, we haven't. We were involved in the very beginning, back in the mid-90s, in designing effectively the Red Tractor logo on the back of an industry in meltdown, BSE, foot and mouth, salmonella, but also huge plethora of different audits, different schemes, and no British identity. So look, there are two things. There's something else that I want to talk to you about alongside this, but for us, that governance review needs a technical expert. We've signed off the terms of reference and unanimous support from our council to do that.
So it seems as though you're saying there's a case for reform of Red Tractor. How radical is that reform going to be, and is it going to satisfy your members who are extremely disgruntled?
So, having thought about nothing else, I have been extremely concerned about growing our market share effectively, British commitments from retailers, reneging on those commitments, maintaining what has been committed to, and there's been seismic change in the last decade from where we were then to where they are now. But ultimately we need to see a bigger market share here in the UK, and we need to grow our opportunity in exports. But listening to where members are right now, it is clear that a review of governance alone does not do enough. We need to see a revolutionised approach, I would say, to farm to fork assurance. I think that is absolutely essential. June 2000 was when Red Tractor Assurance came to life. The world was incomparable back in 2000. We were solid members of the European Union. We've left Europe now. We've left Europe. We've had a war, an ongoing war in Ukraine. We've really got to focus on, is assurance fit for purpose, not just for the next decade, but for the next 2 decades. We've added and we've added and we've added. So many people now say to me, look, I've got a file on a shelf. I've got pages and pages and pages. What is that doing for the value of my business? And what is it actually doing for the consumer? How does this relate to the consumer? And I can see many of our members that do not have a direct relationship with the consumer. They are several steps removed. They have no relationship with the consumer, and yet they are being asked to jump through ever more hoops. And, something that I've been looking at, one of our members is supplying deer venison into the supply chain. They have to produce a certificate of compliance. So for those that aren't close to the marketplace, is there an opportunity that we have light touch assurance that is about legal compliance? We don't need to have everybody jumping through ever higher hoops. But ultimately, and I think the worry of last week was, this is about how we influence others, that this change needs to happen, how we have assurance that is really fit for the modern day, assurance that is fit for an independent trading nation, assurance that works as a badge of honour effectively for farm businesses that everyone can stand behind. So what I've kicked off today is, yes, we will do an independent review on the governance, but I don't think that touches the sides of what needs to happen, and I want to see that revolutionised approach from farm to fork assurance that has everybody bought into it. And we are really challenging on the why and the value. I think those are 2 critical questions.
So what does that mean for getting farmers a premium then? Because they haven't had one in the 23 years that Red Tractor's been around. How are you going to ensure that they get a premium from Red Tractor in future?
Well, you say they haven't had a premium. I think this is a complex subject. So if we look at beef at the moment, our price in the UK throughout the summer was 70p per kilo more than the finished price in Ireland. 70p per kilo. That equates to over £200 an animal.
Is that down to Red Tractor?
It's down to differentiation in the market. And how do you differentiate your market? You differentiate your market by having a clear audit trail of how that has been produced. What we do know is the Union Jack on its own is incredibly dangerous. You've heard me talk time and time again. I remember when Liam Fox was at DIT and he said the great opportunity of Brexit is to bring in cheap raw ingredients and add value to them under the Union Jack. We look at pig prices now, you know, the pig sector having been through an absolute catastrophe, a calamity of downsizing the sector now, but it's got a price that sits above the European price because what is required of that sector sits above the European standard. So what we've got to do is to make sure those legislated targets on the environment, of which all my members are going to have to jump through those hoops to achieve that legislation on clean air, clean water, net zero, all of which are legislated. We've got to make sure that there is a value in all of that. So I think in some cases you've got clear examples whereby differentiation has led to a premium price, but you've also got requirements now on sustainability. If I look at fresh produce as an example, it was absolutely demanded of the fresh produce sector that it had to have an environmental arm. Effectively, it had to be showing its environmental footprint. So Leaf Mart was mandated on that sector. We've only got one retailer now that isn't requesting that growers are Leaf Mart. Are they getting a value for it? No, they're not. Are they getting undercut in the market? Yes, they are. So the fundamental conversation really is about value. Who pays for it? Does it sit in the private market? Are we seriously going to think that there is going to be a premium coming back? Some people can say yes, they can, and you can see some contractual relationships in the arable sector where they can point to a premium. You can also see in other sectors where they're just being asked, like in fresh produce, to step up, do ever more for the environment, and they're not getting a premium. And they're getting judged on a global benchmark. So in all of this, we're sucking in, and if ever there is something that really antagonises farmers more than anything else, it is the fact that we are sucking in more imports that are not produced to those same standards.
You talked a little bit about your relationship with Red Tractor. Do you think that you've been too close to Red Tractor?
Too close. If you want to influence something, you have to have, I mean, the easiest thing is to be, and I've been angry, it's well documented by you in many situations, but ultimately it's about influencing people to drive the change that is needed. And that is about a constructive relationship with the BRC, Red Tractor, processors, manufacturers, right the way through the supply chain to get them to recognise what needs to happen.
Can you give us an example of a time when you have influenced in favour of your membership then behind closed doors?
Oh my goodness, Abby, I would hope that is clear knowledge to everyone. I mean, on every level, I would say. On trade, you know, I was repeatedly told, and I guess people can say, well, look, we've got imports coming in, but we are not the government, we are the NFU, we can only influence. So I was told on trade, look, you know, you are never, ever going to get anything on trade. There is going to be no mechanism for reporting on any trade deals. Those deals will be done behind closed doors. And the Trade Agricultural Commission can happen for 1 year only, and that's it. We now have a Trade Agricultural Commission that sits in primary legislation. That means it will be around for 7 years minimum. So it will go into...
That's not Red Tractor though, that's the government, isn't it? I'm talking about how you've influenced the BRC, Red Tractor, those bodies for the benefit of your members.
Well, look, I've never sat on a sector committee, so sector by sector, you know, it's a different approach. Where I have, I think, had real influence, and the NFU and my predecessors have had real influence, is encouraging retailers to be sourcing more British. So you remember the Asda commitment to go from British and Irish to 100% British. They then flip-flop back into British and Irish. We've got commitment from all of them now. If you remember back in the day, Morrison's were not focused on British right the way across their supply chains. They took the decision under Dave Potts, with a lot of pushing from us, that on their fresh, they would focus on 100% British. The Co-op had no plans to go to 100% British. They've got 100% British on fresh and frozen. You can't challenge a retailer or anybody else in the supply chain or anybody on procurement unless you have an audit trail of how that has been produced in order to grow your market share. So I think everybody that I speak to agrees that assurance is critical to differentiate our market. What I am saying is we need to see seismic reform throughout the supply chain of who is going to pay, so economic impact assessment, who is going to pay for all of this, and can't we do it better? As an independent nation outside of the EU, can we not do this better? Can we not be relevant to everybody, deliver better cost benefit? And I think we can. And one thing's for certain, if we just sit here saying that it's not right, it's not right, it's not right, that is going to do nothing. We've really got to roll up our sleeves across every commodity, and we've got to work with others. I chair the Farming Organisations Roundtable. AHDB is part of that, National Sheep Association, National Beef Association, CLA, TFA. We've got to bring everyone together on all of this, Abby. This can't just be about the NFU. It's got to be about bringing everyone together, and upstream in the supply chain as well.
I want to talk a little bit about specifically the Greener Farm commitment. So the NFU supported that on the Red Tractor board. Can you tell us why it was that you supported it? What do you think it would do for your members?
So the supply chain has been demanding effectively sustainability requirements. You've only got to look at what Tesco's are doing with WWF. We've got legislated targets. We've got the 2030 targets on biodiversity. So everybody wants to see sustainability for their CSR effectively. I think our challenge with assurance to date has been you've got so many vested interests sat round the table that the governance is almost flawed from the very start, because we are always saying, no, don't go further. And you've only got to look at the challenges of consulting on version 5 to see how febrile that was, you know.
But you weren't saying no, were you? You agreed to it.
We were saying no on many different things. We
Not
are saying
on the Greener Farm commitment, though.
No, so coming to that, so on the Greener Farm commitment, so version 5, changes in standards, nobody wants to see the baseline raise. And the baseline continues to raise, and it's your classic free-range egg example that effectively that becomes the norm. And, you know, all those costs that are associated with the business are just taken as a given, and that becomes the baseline. And no sector has shown it more really than the poultry sector, whereby we just raise the standards and then that becomes normal. So for us, you know, we do support a modular approach effectively, but it needs to be much more modular. So when I talk about levels of compliance as per what they've got in the deer sector, making sure that you've got a light touch assurance through to whatever the market is requiring, that farmers and growers can allow an assurance scheme that fits for their business. So the principle of a bolt-on, the Better Chicken commitment, is a classic case in point, whereby it was agreed that actually there was demand, consumer demand, for a better chicken commitment, higher levels of animal welfare, lower stocking rates. But the outcome has been that consumers find it too expensive in many cases, and they're not buying it. And so we've got to be focusing on what do consumers want to buy and what do we want to produce. Now, what I do know with the poultry sector is all of my members would love to be producing a bird at the value of £8. That would be great. They could have less birds, they could have more space, but does the market want to buy it? No, it doesn't. And that really is the crux of the problem here. People have got used to cheap food. They want effectively, you know, the gold tap ivory bath effectively and pay a plastic price for it, and that's unsustainable, and we've seen it cracking at every level. And the other thing I want to say to this is it's not just about assurance. We had Mark White, the grocery code adjudicator, into our council session. It took 10 years for us to get the grocery code adjudicator in place, the GSCOP, making sure that farmers and growers have a space that they can go to deal with disputes. So Mark White can go into any retailer any day of the week and say, I've got a problem here. What is clear to me is now the role of the GCA within the frameworks. We have got to create as a badge of honour effectively at board level, at CSR level, corporate and social responsibility, that shareholders, chief execs, boards at the top of retail businesses see it as a badge of honour to have a really good trading relationship with their supplier. At the moment, if you're going to be a good buyer, you're a harsh negotiator. And so the code continues to have to invest our food business team fields a huge number of those calls from people who are petrified to go direct to that retailer for fear of being delisted. And I think this is a critical part of that conversation. How do we get the top of retail to recognise the importance of that great relationship with the supplier? Otherwise, we will continue just having to upskill our members with the code and go in and challenge buyers that they are not behaving responsibly. And it's an untenable situation. And that's a big part of this piece of work.
You're talking now about wanting to revolutionise Red Tractor, but the statement that came out after your NFU council meeting on Tuesday didn't even reference the motion that was passed. It said you agreed with the process but not the principles. The Farmers Weekly team spoke to multiple delegates who said that wasn't reflective of the discussions that were had there. Why is there a big U-turn on this?
There isn't a U-turn at all. The frustration that I had was that the resolution had broken cover before we had been able to speak to anybody at all. I mean, it's easy to have your day in the sun, effectively being really, really angry at something, but this is about developing meaningful change. And so that is why that what was deemed an anodyne press release was put out to just say, look, this has got to be done right. And I can't just come out and create policy on the hoof whenever I choose to. I've got to bring all commodities. Now, rest assured, the council session we've just had, people want to see a different approach, effectively sector by sector, even down to livestock, to people saying we've got to have a different approach to sheep versus beef, totally different mechanisms for assurance going forwards. And so there is not a one size fits all. And this is about affecting change. So for our boards to be able to really work on this, it's not going to be about just saying, Red Tractor, you're doing this wrong. It's going to be about whole chain commitment to everybody accepting that we need to do things differently, and that we can, as an independent nation, that we can do things differently. We can cut cost out. We can cut bureaucracy out. We cannot have just a one size fits all. So, that was the focus. And getting this right, getting it established, getting it agreed with our FFE board was absolutely critical.
Would you agree that that approach was perhaps not the right one? Because what in the event it did was just stoke anger. Do you think you dropped the ball on this a little bit?
Look, you've got to look at yourself all the time. I've made loads and loads of mistakes. I don't get everything right all the time. But, the NFU is an organisation led by farmers, for farmers, backed by phenomenal levels of technical expertise in the staff. So what I do say to everybody out there is that we absolutely hear you loud and clear. This is unsustainable going forwards, that we continue how we are. But if we're going to change it, what I talked about with the role of the grocery code adjudicator, that took 10 years. This cannot take 10 years. Things never, ever happen on the back of a tweet, on the back of a press release. They are about hard yards of developing policy, of influencing people as to how this can be achieved.
Having seen the levels of anger now among the membership, would you like to apologise to them for the way that this has been handled?
Look, nothing matters more to me than our members. It's a mixed bag out there. I've got an inbox that is full of people saying, we need to crack on with this. Sustainability is the licence to trade. Why are you holding it back? Why are you stepping away from assurance? We're not. I just focused, Abby, on getting this right, on making sure it works for members across all land areas, across all land tenures. And assurance is one thing. What we mustn't do is take our eye off the ball of everything else that's going on. We are on a de-link journey. We've got 50% of BPS gone. We've got half the country flooded. We've got crops that are ruined, and we've got nothing to deal with risk and volatility. So there are many, many different parts to this sustainability piece that we have to get right. So I'll be the first to apologise, but I haven't given up 10 years of my life, step back from my business to go and cock stuff up. I'm committed every single day of the week, every hour of that day, and long into the night to getting things right. Nobody in my position goes out to cause any harm. So if anybody feels upset by anything that's happened, of course I apologise profusely. But my commitment, why would I be doing this? Why would I be doing it if I didn't want to get it right? I'm a tenant farmer on 300 acres. I got involved in the NFU because I saw a way of it creating change, and that's what I've been committed to. And that's what I'm committed to now.
Are all three of the office holders in agreement with the way that this has been handled?
They haven't said any differently to me, no. We have to operate as a team. The NFU is a huge organisation, from our council members down into our branch relationships. We've got to be one NFU, because that is how we're powerful, to speak as one. So, we're a team. I lead a team, but it's a much bigger team than the office holders.
What steps are you going to take now to learn from this experience and to help drive the NFU forward in a positive way?
Look, it's well documented that I'm coming to the end of my time leading the NFU. I can look back on it as a time when I've made, plenty of mistakes, as I referred to. But all I can say is that I've been 100% committed to getting the job done and getting the job done right, to working with all parties across all sectors. And I think the NFU can show that it has achieved a lot, and that has been my focus, because otherwise why else would I have done it? So I've only got 4 months left, but I believe outlining and getting the rest of the supply chain effectively, which I need to do. I need to bring processors, manufacturers, retailers into saying, do you know what, we can do assurance differently, and we can differentiate in our market, and there is going to be profitability in all of this. And, for me, the first retailer that comes out and says, look, I want to change the conversation here. I want my CSR, my corporate and social responsibility. I want that badge of honour with my supplier. I want to make sure we've got a great trading relationship and they are getting a fair return, a profitable return for what they are producing. So that is what success looks like to me.
Thank you, Nat.